Okay, we left off page 844. Page 844, right before the big aleph, next to the bottom paragraph. He says he would want to explain 7 aspects, 7 issues relating to Ava, to love. Echad, firstly, Echad mehem, mahu ino avo be'elokim yisbarach. What does it mean to love God? Hasheni, al kol ponim tiya avo be'elokim. Al kama ponim tiya. How many levels of love are there? You know, you love or you don't love. Hashlishi, echad derech elor. Now, how does one bring it about? Now you understand. Now, how do you, if you don't, how do you bring yourself to love God? Right? That's the Rambam's question. There's a mitzvah to love God. A person says, I understand, I should, but I don't. So what am I supposed to do? You know, spinach. But you should like spinach. You don't like spinach. How do you get yourself to like spinach? Haravi. Imhi bicholas odom. Imlo, is it within one's capacity to achieve it? Evidently it is. If there's a mitzvah to love God, evidently it's within your ability to bring it about. I remember many years ago, there was a certain person he was dating. He was already older. And he finally met a girl, and he still wasn't. I said, let's say she would be the only woman in the world. Would you marry her? It's not a question. So make believe she's the only woman, and there's nobody else. He ended up marrying her. Okay? Since, again, everything's relative. You know, what? There's a rush, there's a famous rush in Sukkah. The mitzvah of Sukkah, the esrog has to be pre-Eitz Hodor. It's not the mitzvah of Zekei Levan Ve'u. In its essence, it has to be an attractive fruit. So let's say the esrog didn't develop properly. It's not that nice, so it's puzzle. It's puzzle. It's not valid. What about 1 year? It's a very bad crop. So last year, nobody would look at this esrog. But relatively speaking, compared to others, this is exceptional. The Rosh says 1 year it's Hodor, another year it's not Hodor. You know, beauty is what? Is relative to what exists. Because that's reality, the way you see it. Chamishi, ba'ofnei mafsideo. Various things that preclude it. Preclude is a nice word, mafsideo. It actually does not allow it to come about. Hashishi ososeho asher behem tizborer hame'amamin. Signs in which it can be verified in the believer. Hashvi b'minogi oviel olokim. How do people who do love God, how do they conduct themselves? Again, we're talking about. It's not simple. Love is not simple. Alan is pre-guessing the work here. He wants to be. He's very humble. He wants to be proven that he's not right. So tomorrow, okay. Okay. What does it mean to love God? What does it mean to love God? Who klos hanefesh unetos atzma laborei. He says, it's the yearning of the soul. Unetos atzmo elaborei. The longing in its very essence for the Creator. So that you should cleave to the exalted light. Ushanefesh etzim poshet ruchoni. He says the neshama, the soul, he says, is a simple spiritual element. Notel adomelo be'ishim aruchoniyim. You know, likes attract. It's not opposite attract. The stronger the likeness, you're attracted. You know, it's interesting. Years ago in America, when the refugees came from Europe, people came from different parts of Europe, Jews. Yeah, people came, they were known as the Galicianas. A Lithuanian Jew wouldn't go with a 1,000-foot pole near a person who came from that part of Europe. It was such a, marriage-wise, I mean, it was like fire and water. That's what it was. Hasidim, Misnagdim, families didn't have to marry. The whole, everything, the behavior, the mindset, the perspective, there was no likeness between the two of them. So people, landsmen, you know, come from the same region, same town, there's an attraction. So when is the person attracted to God? If you have a sense of your spirituality. If you live more as a spiritual person, then you're drawn towards spirituality, which is Hashem. But if you're a physical person and you emphasize your physicality, so this interferes. You have no interest. Nota el adomelo me'ishim aruchoniyim. So you're drawn to something which is similar, which has a semblance of what the person is. U'misrachekes miteveh me'asher hu kenegdo min agufos ha'ovos. And you distance yourself naturally from something which is what? Which is contrary to what you are. He says, terrestrial bodies, gufos ha'ovos, means earthiness. The Rambam writes, the Rambam was a doctor, and he says, just as you have choli ha-nefesh, you have choli ha-guf. As you have choli ha-guf, you have choli ha-nefesh. As you have physical illnesses, you have spiritual illness. A person can be spiritually sick. What's a person's physically sick? So he says a person, when he eats, tastes sweet, it's bitter, and bitter is sweet. A person who craves to eat charcoal and earth, people crave for that. It's inedible. He says the same thing. People, they cannot tolerate anything that has to do with spirituality. They see anything which is a mitzvah, anything, it actually, they feel agitated by it. He says these people, they have illness of the soul. That's called choli ha-nefesh. Same thing. So a person who's choli, he doesn't have choli ha-nefesh, but he's totally numb. He's not attracted to it. But a person who has a sense of his spirituality, this is something, it says like, it warms my heart. Certain people, you know, it's very interesting. In the early part of 20th century, even though Jews did not observe Shabbos, they would go to shul and they'd open the shop. They'd go to the store. Chazonim was a big thing in New York City, or throughout the country. They had the big shuls. Chazonim would come from Europe, and they would pay an entrance. They'd pay a fee to go listen to the chazan. And the Jews, it was like, they were like in a different world at that time. When the chazan, he sang, and they could listen for hours. But that attached them. It was more than an opera. It's not going to the opera. It had to do with their Jewishness. That's what it was. Because they did have an attraction for that. They had no interest in listening to the opera. They wanted to hear chazonos, because it had to touch them. No, it touched them spiritually, emotionally, whatever you want, but good, because they did have an interest. It was the circumstance which caused them that they didn't observe, or ignorance. That's the reason why they didn't observe. But in terms of what they wanted, what they felt, they did feel that. It's a famous story during the Holocaust. There was a certain town in Poland where the mayor of the town was a rabbi anti-Semite. And the Jews, they feared him, and when he'd come into town on his white horse, he had a big handlebar mustache, he looked like a goy, and they were terrorized. The Jews were terrorized. When the Nazis came into town, they trusted nobody in terms of his pedigree. And they did a background search and everything. Are you Jewish? You're not Jewish. And if you are you 50% Jewish? You're Jewish. And that's the way it was. So they questioned this person's pedigree. Was he Jewish? So they said, let's even, the man, you know, he terrorizes Jews. He's a rabid anti-Semite. He said, look, it means nothing to us. So finally, they gave him the ultimate test. They took a Sefer Torah, and they said to the man, trample on it. We want you to trample on the Torah scroll. He would not trample on it. They put a gun to his head, they killed him on the spot. Right? But the man, all the years, he was a rabid anti-Semite, he terrorized Jews, they persecuted him. This trample on the Torah, he couldn't do that. Even though it meant giving his life. They killed him, doesn't make a difference. To be continued. Right. Look, you have to stoke the coal. You don't stoke the coal, it goes out, the fire goes out, that's it.